Stacking modifiers is fun, beyond just seeing number go up. To take for example EU4, stacking something stupid like minus 80% land maintenance and having 100,000 million troops in the field, or stacking 95% admin efficiency and taking one China in a war, or even getting dev cost modifiers to minus 100% and dev clicking for free, well those are extremes sure, but they're all inherently fun. Modifiers and the ability to stack modifiers exist everywhere within so many video games that a comprehensive list would be practically impossible. Cookie Clicker is a game about stacking modifiers to make number go up. Shooting games like Helldivers 2 have entire upgrade lines that modify things like +1 salvo per barrage or -1 second reduction in call-in time for orbital stratagems. And even in something old like Civ 3, you could stack tourism gold with science wonders and end up figuring out paratroopers in 1350. Sure, this can all sound overpowered and unbalanced, and while frequently true, it is also fun. What it can be though is broken, and while it's a large problem that cannot be inherently solved with a simple on-off switch, I nevertheless have an idea that would, in my opinion, unironically fix everything, and it can be summarized as such. Discount modifiers are bad, and efficiency modifiers are good. I am a lemon cake, and I'm going to spend the rest of this video attempting to both explain what I mean by that and convince you of my vision. But before we do continue, well, a like would be appreciated, and a subscription would be amazing if you haven't already. 100k remains a very lofty and ambitious goal, but one I nevertheless hope to achieve, so if you haven't subscribed, well, it would be insanely appreciated. Finally, if you're interested in acquiring EU5 or anything else on the Paradox store, please do use code LEMONCAKE, it does help support the channel. But with that said, let's get our definitions out of the way. So when I say discount modifier bad and efficiency modifier good, what do I mean? Well, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to define a discount modifier as one that reduces the cost of doing something, and I'm going to define an efficiency modifier as something that makes an action more efficient, so you gain more for doing the same thing. They seem very similar on the surface, but indeed the devil is in the details. To give an example of a reduction modifier, let's consider land maintenance from EU4. At a minus 10% land maintenance, your troops get 10% cheaper. So far so good. If you are spending 100 a month on troops, congratulations, you have now saved 10 duckies, representing a 10% total discount and a 10% marginal discount from a 10% reduction modifier. But let's say you've got minus 15% from raising war taxes. You have a loyal influential nobility for a further minus 10%, you're trading in salt for minus 5%, and you're doing all of this with Prussia, and have 100% militarization for a further minus 20%, meaning you have minus 50% land maintenance. Now if you hire a Grand Captain for a further 10% discount, your troops do get minus 10% cheaper, but if you were spending 100 a month on troops, well, that means that the base cost would have had to be 200, and a 60% discount on 200 is minus 120, aka you'll be spending 80 ducats on troops with the discount. As such, with discount stacking, the exact same minus 10% when you already have a 50% discount contributes a 20%, not 10%, total discount, aka you're getting a 20% discount from a 10% reduction modifier. This does break when you hit 100%. The margin of going from a 90% discount to a 100% discount is quite literally infinity, and if the cap isn't set at 100%, well the troops will actually start paying you past that point, and I'm not exaggerating. At the time of making this video, in EU5, you could stack antagonism impact, aka aggressive expansion impact, beyond minus 100%, which didn't just mean that you no longer gained antagonism from taking land, though instead you would lose antagonism from taking provinces, and the more provinces you took, the more antagonism you would lose. Now let's discuss an efficiency modifier, and I'm going to use infantry combatability in this example, again from EU4, but you can use levy combat efficiency in EU5, or say ship weapon damage in Stellaris, or even knight effectiveness in Crusader Kings 3, you get the point. Combatability is combat efficiency, where if you have 10% infantry combatability, you deal 10% more damage. This means that if your infantry was previously dealing 100 damage units, with plus 10% infantry combatability, you now deal 110 damage units, representing a plus 10 increase in absolute terms and a 10% marginal increase from a plus 10% modifier. But say you are working on a strong infantry build and you have stacked an incredible plus 50% infantry combatability. You know, you're playing Prussia again, so you have 20% from Prussian ideas, you go quality for another 10%, and then you grab mercenary for another 10%, after which you become Confucian and harmonize with Shinto. Interesting, you're spicing it up, I see, but you now have a further 10% from that, so now you have 50% infantry combatability. Neat. Well, after doing all that, you realize you can go ahead and grab the Mandate of Heaven, and would you look at that, you have access to the Boost Officer Corps decision for a 10% increase in infantry combatability. Let's see what it does. You would go from dealing 150 damage with your infantry to dealing 160 damage, representing the same plus 10 increase in absolute terms, but this is now a 6.6 recurring, or let's round up to 6.7% marginal increase from a 10% modifier. To take the same extreme as we previously had with a 90% reduction modifier, instead of hitting 100 infantry combat leading to a marginal 100% discount, now you go from 190 damage dealt to 200 damage dealt, representing a mere 5.2% marginal increase for the same 10% modifier. It's literally almost half as good. But as you may guess, in terms of playing the game, it's not exactly easier to obtain these modifiers as you use up more and more easy sources of the modifier. To be clear, each jump is still an increase. 160% infantry combat ability is still better than 150%, but each jump up itself is less impactful, instead of exponentially more impactful. This is not to say that efficiency modifiers can't become overpowered. A win-the-game efficiency modifier can certainly exist. In fact, many do. It's called goods produced in EU4, for example. But it does go without saying that when you try to balance around the existence or possibility of stacking a discount modifier to 100%, well, you run into issues. First of all, not capping the modifier at 100% or even say 90% in the case, for example, of province war score cost, well, that leads to issues. I joke about minus 90 war score cost being enough to take one China, and that's true, but minus 100% war score cost would mean that taking land in peace deals would be literally free. And capping this at 90% as an example is not only rather arbitrary and against the spirit of fun modifier stacking, dare I say, it can also get confusing. Some things get capped at 100% reduction, for example proximity costs in EU5, an example we'll be discussing shortly, but other things like land maintenance is capped at 90%, while diplomatic annexation cost is capped at a minimum cost of 0.1 dip per dev, or an effective cap of 98.75%. Thank you, Paradox, and it's not actually the worst example. The winner for arbitrary confusion has to go to core creation cost, a modifier that reduces both the cost of creating cores, capped at minus 90%, and reducing the time needed to core, capping at minus 80%. The same modifier has two different effects, which both have different caps, and if you're confused, don't worry, Paradox Interactive is too. On the official Paradox YouTube channel, some poor intern would create the following post. Very pretty graphics, but he was straight up incorrect, assuming that both CCR cost and CCR time would be capped at minus 90%. But because core creation time is actually capped at minus 80%, the claim of 3.6 months minimum to core is straight up wrong. It's actually 6 months minimum to core. And what annoys me the most is that this isn't necessary complexity. When we look at modifiers like discipline, mill tactics, and combat ability and wonder how they interact with each other, we are met with math equations where their relation to each other is not immediately obvious, and we need experience in game to get a feel for in practice. For modeling something on a graph is all well and good, but if obtaining mill tactics is 3 times harder than updating discipline, well, that's hard to show on a graph. My point though is that Paradox games are complex, and while it's fine to not understand everything that's going on, the demands on the player in terms of, to put simply, what they have to learn is already quite intensive. I mean, even in the case of something as relatively simple as how does gold mine depletion work, the Wikipedia article reads, and I quote, "Given a gold-producing province with a production development P, the discrete state matrix for a period of a year is that," and look, it keeps going. It's not something stupidly complex, it's more of an emergent property than anything else, to be clear, but in a game with systems that, dare I say, permit this level of complexity and demand such high understanding from the player, why are we also making it worse by making players learn which modifiers stack to which arbitrary percentage numbers? This entire thing is avoided with efficiency modifiers, because if you stack plus 100% instead of minus 100%, nothing conceptually break. Sure, your troops do double damage now, but you're not building workshops in negative time, to give another patched example. The second problem we have to discuss, though, is balance. See, Paradox does need to balance these games, and to give an absurd example, let's imagine combat ability, instead of making your troops deal, say, plus 10% damage for 10 combat ability, made 10% combat ability reduce the enemy HP points by 10%. Not a perfect equivalence, but frankly good enough. Now let's consider stacking combat ability. Getting to 100% combat ability does reduce enemy HP by 100%, so Paradox puts in a combat ability cap of 90, but more crucially, Paradox also nerfs the 20% combat ability Prussia has to 10%. Now Prussia, of course, is meant to be the quote-unquote best fighting nation, so to keep Prussia on top, we nerf everyone else's 10% down to 5%. If I'm a modifier stacking enjoyer, my life just got a lot harder, that's for sure. But for a person like me, that's just an extra challenge, an extra level, some extra hoops I have to jump through to get to minus 90%. For the average player, well, now Prussia does less damage, and every other nation with combat ability or bonuses that were meant to reflect the historical ability of said nations to fight, and to give those nations extra character, well, their ability to fight is now hurt, and the enjoyment of playing the game for the average non-modifier stacking extreme enjoyer is reduced. After all, if you want to play a nation like the Mughals, who did a bunch of conquest, Paradox can model that by giving them, say, minus 30 province war score cost. The issue is, this modifier is an absolute win button for modifier stacking enjoyers, because I will run diplomatic ideas for -20%, I will run multiforts for -15%, etc, and now I hit -90% well 5 minutes into the game. And what's worse is that for the average player, if you only have -30% and not much else, well, 30% more conquering speed doesn't actually make the Mugles feel as unique as they should. Now, this can be changed with non-modifier effects, but I hope you see how the existence of the potential of modifier stacking leads to less modifiers and a nerf state of the game for everyone else playing the game more normally. And I do mean more normally, because if you watch my old modifier stacking videos on YouTube, you would know that to get some of these modifiers to the cap, you had to do some insane things, and the videos would go something like this. First, start an Iron Man game of EU5, making sure to be achievement compatible, aka standard setup. Start as this small tribe in the Amazon. Next, you want to form Belgium, after which you need to form Japan, become Moroccan primary culture, but only after getting the Aztec Tier 1 government reform, and switch your religion to Norse after revoking the HRE. You can revoke the HRE after flipping Norse, but remember, you will need religious peace in the HRE if you want to do this in this order. After this, you need to go grab the Mandate of Heaven, after which you need to load the save into EU4, which will let you form Fiji, bypassing the end-tag condition of the HRE, meaning that you can now go to the Mantis village and grab Claw, which lets you access Babylon. Using the free Great Scientist from writing, you can grab Legalism 3, so you can now go ahead and pass Primogeniture, meaning that you now have enough factories to get the extra research slot from the focus tree, which gives you the 2 wetware mainframes you need to finish your Advanced Circuit Assembler 7. If you have done all of this correctly, you should now have -100% or money cost modifier, meaning if you enter any shop, you will have a permanent 100% discount on the cost of all items, letting you get anything you want, but watch out. If inflation goes above 0, well, 1% inflation leads to a 1% increase in the cost of everything, so you'll have to pay 1% for the cost of goods and services again, so make sure to keep inflation at 0 for this to work. Right, that was a bit of a tangent, but as you may guess, these kind of challenge runs are not the average playthrough in any video game, and hence I do believe nerfing Mughal blob inability because too high of a single modifier in that domain can be abusable isn't a good game design approach. EU5 is no stranger to cost modifiers. Most egregiously in my opinion, we have proximity cost, which isn't capped. Now, getting proximity cost isn't easy. Going full centralization decreases it by a whole -10%, which is pretty irrelevant for the average playthrough, let's be honest. But where this 10% shines, of course, is that you can stack it. Technologies, advances, unique mechanics, and would you look at that, Mr. Playmaker, what do you have over here? Oh, it's a Timrid, a horde from Central Asia into Holy Roman Empire unification campaign, where you change your primary culture to Muscovite, hence becoming the Holy Roman Tsardom, after which you took the Chinese Mandate of Heaven, and you have a 100% proximity cost reduction. So you have 100 control in Paris when your capital is in central China, I see. In fact, according to proximity cost, the cost to go to Paris from Korea is now 0, in the same way as the cost to go from Korea to South Africa. And hence you have not only invented teleportation, but you now have 100% control over everywhere, so you have all of the money and 8 million levies. Right. See, what Paradox can do is look at this and nerf proximity cost even more, meaning for the average player not doing horde into Germany, into Russia, into China campaigns, they are going to have less value in proximity cost, making the game less fun and harder to play. And for players like Playmaker, they now have to add a pit stop in India for their horde Germany, Russia, China run, which I mean is annoying for sure, but you get the point, they will just go do that. The arms race will continue, and the average player just loses. No, my solution is a comprehensive one and would address this issue at its core. Going back to the start of the video, discount modifiers are bad and efficiency modifiers are good. So remove all discount modifiers and make them efficiency modifiers. Let's consider the case of province war score cost. The average province with say 100k people costs 10 war score, and if you get -100% war score cost, you pay 0 war score and take all the land for free. Instead, let's turn province war score cost into conquest efficiency. Now at 100 conquest efficiency, for 10 war score, instead of taking 100k pops worth of land, you can now take 200k pops worth of land. See, now I can give the Mughals 30%, hell, let's make that 50% conquest efficiency, and it's fine. Modifier stacking enjoyers can stack 450 conquest efficiency and still need multiple wars to take places over. The average player can enjoy a more substantial, bigger number feeling buff of plus 50% on something instead of minus 30%, so let's be honest, they're happier. And even Paradox doesn't need to worry about adding a minus 5% CCR policy to an idea group for the long-term balance of the game, so they can spend that dev time on new mechanics or fixing bugs or helping out the Stellaris dev team. Look, they probably need a hand on that 5th total overhaul they're working on. That is my pitch. What do you think? That being said though, this is unfortunately all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all my channel members, especially Ark, Solus, Lemon, Lord Zendika, Mikastan, Hatan, Star32, The Awesome Rabbit, Best for Gaming, Grandma Flavia, Lebrule, WH Sov, Anthony35, AC Napo, Conspiracy Pizza, Yukata, Danray, Marvi, Jack, Ryland, Stuart Allen, Andrew Black, Nebulous, Antronic, Twinet, and Aquabird.